Now, if you're old like I am, you remember back in the day, we had these things called cathode ray tube televisions. That means that the television is more than 3 inches thick. So back in the day, we had these TVs, and you'd be watching TV, minding your own business, and all of a sudden, the vertical hold would be screwed up. So you'd see the screen flipping upward over and over and over, and you'd have to go up and turn the dial and straighten that out. Then all of a sudden, the horizontal hold would be out of whack, and the screen would be crooked and sliding back and forth. So you'd go up and turn the dial and fix that problem. Then, just when you thought you were out of the woods, you'd be watching Mr. Rogers talk to his trolley, and suddenly, Days of Our Lives was on the screen. It was like a mixture of Mr. Rogers and Days of Our Lives, like some kind of monstrosity of a nice guy in a cardigan sweater mutating with a woman who's upset because her husband cheated on her. So your state-of-the-art cathode ray television is suddenly picking up 2 channels at once. And anyone who remembers these good old days remembers the rabbit ear antennas on top of the television that you had to adjust to pick up channels. And for whatever reason, in the middle of a television show, suddenly you'd have to readjust them. Sooner or later, you'd have those aluminum foil balls on the end of each antenna, and your dad would have you up there adjusting the antennas, and it would get to the point where the only way to continue to tune in the football game was to hold one of the antennas with your right hand, stand on your left foot, and turn your head 45 degrees to the left. And your dad would make you stand like that until the end of the fourth quarter. So why am I going on and on about all the wonders of cathode ray televisions? Well, I want to make an analogy between all these interference patterns, static patterns, and inability to stay tuned onto one channel with the way our minds function. Thoughts are very much like all these interference patterns that you had to suffer through when you watched television. So whatever was actually being broadcast from the studio was clear, three-dimensional, alive, vivid. But as it got turned into electrical signals and transmitted through the airways and then reconstructed on your television screen, there are a lot of steps along that process that can get screwed up. This is the vertical hold, the horizontal hold, trying to tune into more than one channel at once, or just getting a bad signal altogether. These are similar to the layers of perceptual filtering through which we experience reality. So the actual world is crystal clear. There's no distortion. Things are radically alive, intimate, without boundary, without substance, without distance, without being bound by time. But the layers of filtering, trying to reconstruct that as an internal identity, creates a lot of distortion. Some of those perceptual filters cause a sense of perpetuity, solidity, predictability that don't exist out there. But the overriding filtering system looks at what's out there and says, nope, we're going to change that. I want that to look like it isn't. I want to add a bunch to it. I want to subtract a bunch from it. And most importantly, I want to feel like I'm in control of it. But of course, you can't be in control of radical aliveness. It's just what it is. So the only way to feel like you're in control of it is to imagine a little person inside yourself called me, a homunculus, a little agent that can look at how things are and decide whether it likes them or not, push and pull on reality, make it a little more of this, a little less of that, add judgment and a value system to what's being experienced, as if it has some choice about what's being experienced. That's the static. That's the filtering. That's the vertical and horizontal hold going out of whack. So much of this process of coming into synchronicity, unity with what is, fidelity with the living truth of what is, what's happening right now, is about clear seeing without filters. So sometimes that requires us to become aware of the filters. Because when we first start out, we're not even aware the filtering is happening. We might just feel something uncomfortable is going on, but we don't know what it is. Then we start to notice, oh wow, I'm in my thoughts so much of the time. And thoughts are always about the past and future, never about the present. And they're generally uncomfortable. The thoughts about what I need to do, who I need to be, my doubts, self-doubts, second-guessing myself, wondering what will happen in the future, stressing over what will happen in the future. When we become aware that the thoughts are inherently uncomfortable and that they're filtering, they're something we're looking through like a dirty lens or a dirty window that we're looking through to see reality, then we have a chance. We have a chance of uprooting that filter. And that filter is ultimately called separation. I am something separate from that world out there. I'm a person in here, and I have a job, and my job is to make myself feel better. My job is to get what I think I need, and I have to think about how to do that. I have to imagine it. And I'm going to imagine it into being. But do you see how this binds attention and identity into the filtering system itself? So then the filtering system starts to feel alive. It starts to feel like what you are. It starts to feel like it has volition. Then we forget that there's actually a world out there. We get so intertwined in the pushing and pulling in our own internal world that we forget that our internal world is a reflection of an external world, of the real, of the actual, of reality unfiltered by mind. So then we become interested in waking up, shifting our identity, finding the trigger point. How does that happen? Where do I look? Well, often we start by looking at, where am I? What am I? I'm taking myself to be this person in time. I'm taking myself to be this person who's going to solve its problems through thought, but it never works. It always feels uncomfortable. So then who am I? Where am I? Where's the undeniable knowing of I? It feels like it's here, and yet the thoughts keep seeming to divide it up. But what am I without those thoughts? Who am I without those thoughts? Then you start to notice, without thoughts, things get quiet. When we're not referencing thoughts, things get quiet, simple, direct. And if we remain in that directness long enough, and we don't run back to the habitual pattern of looking through filters, judgments, evaluations, beliefs, which are all thought, all abstract, back to the sense of I, or the sense of pure being, right here, right now, without the right here and right now, without any thought saying anything about being, without any thought saying anything about you or how life is. There's still something right here, something clear, something undeniable. So we just keep easing back into that. Or we keep recognizing any thought that says, I am this, I am that, I'm awake, I'm asleep, I'm getting somewhere, I'm not getting somewhere. Just letting all those go. Filters, let them go. I'm separate from my life and I need to find a way to get back to it. It's just a thought. It's a filter. Let the filters go. So we start to find this place of clarity. There's nothing to say about it. We'll try to say something about it for a while because there's so much self-doubt. We'll want to check in with someone about it. Is this it? Is that it? Well, if you can define it, it's not it. It's self-defining, self-obvious. And at some point, you just learn to trust it. You learn to trust it more than you trust anything you've ever learned about yourself, because you see that everything you've ever learned about yourself is a filter, static. So don't worry about the static. Don't worry about the filters. Don't worry about anything you've ever learned about yourself, because that's one step away already. Don't worry about what anyone else tells you you're supposed to find here, because that's something you learned. This is not learnable because it's already the case. What is it you can't learn because it's already the case? Can you rest there? Can you just acknowledge that? It's not a doing. You can't get back to it because you never left it. So it's sort of an intuitive acknowledgement. It's a aha moment. So stay there. And by stay there, I mean realize there's no choice but to stay there, because where else are you going to go? That's how this works. You got to become aware of the static, interference, the filtering process, and then recognize where it's operating, how it's operating, and then just step back from it into the one thing that's unfiltered, The one thing in your experience right now that's undeniable. The pure knowing of knowing. The pure knowing of awareness. The pure knowing of consciousness. These are all words that can all be turned into thoughts. But what they're pointing to is not a thought. It just is. You just are. So stop there. Don't grab onto thoughts. Don't make thoughts. Don't wrestle with thoughts. Don't push away thoughts. Don't worry about the conceptual. It's just static interference. There's no interference here. Nothing moves here. There's nothing coming or going. You can't find what you've never lost. So there's nothing to think about here. No need to grab a thought. No need to take notes. No need to make a judgment. You've always been here. This has always been just this. Every thought is a doubt at its root. So when you see this, it's the end of doubt. It's the end of the need to grab a thought to try to make yourself feel better because you believed a doubt. Don't worry about confirming it. It's self-confirmatory. Pure awakeness. Pure alertness. Completely at rest.